Not your average tabletop. Woohoo!
Welcome to Not Your Average Tabletop. I'm Zach.
And I'm Pepper.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about the statistics for our top 60 games of all time, and then doing maybe some comparisons to our last couple years as well, just to kind of see how things look. I think it's something we like to do. I think along with making the lists, we like to kind of sometimes go back and look at the data, see if anything looks interesting or not. So if that seems like something you would be interested in, you can stay tuned here and watch along. But yeah, otherwise you can go back and check out our top 60 games of all time from this year if you haven't watched it already, and check out what our top games are. See if it's worth following along with us and subscribing. We kind of match maybe some of your tastes, or if you know that we're completely against your taste, and then you know what not to get. I mean, either way. If you're kind of in between, that's not going to be helpful. So I guess then you don't have to. But otherwise, we can just kind of start off. I haven't looked at this too much. You kind of put most of these together, but I thought the categories kind of sounded pretty interesting. I think we'll just kind of go through them randomly, not really having any special order.
I was kind of adding them as I went, so the order is just really messed up. But the top thing we have here is the crossovers, and I think that's probably the most interesting part to me personally, is kind of seeing between our three lists, yours, mine, and Michaela, kind of who crosses over with who the most, and whether those have increased or decreased based on compared to previous years. And it's especially interesting this year since we added 10 additional games, and we plan to add 10 additional every year until we get to 100. So we actually have more games here, so you would think there should be more crossover this year. But yeah, so I guess we'll do the individual pairings here. So you and your wife, Michaela, so obviously they should play a lot of games and hopefully like a lot of the same. Kind of going from the first year we did it to now, you originally had 12 games crossed over in your 50s, and then you increased that up to 15 games, and this year you're increasing it even more up to 17 games crossed over. And that was actually a smaller increase from last year to this year, even though there were 10 additional games, which is interesting.
That is interesting that it's kind of, less. But at the same time, I know since we did our list last year, Michaela has, I think, played even more different games, unique games. Because we were doing the alphabet. It seems like so long ago now because... this time of year last year, I think we were still doing a challenge. We don't have a challenge this year, so it feels like it was been 2 years ago. But we were completing the last half of our Alphabet Soup challenge, where we were playing all games in our collection from A to Z. So I think she had played actually some new games because I think we were kind of in the back half of the letters at that point. So she had added or had potential to add some new ones that maybe I had already played in the past. So. I could see her list being shook up by that, and then I think she's played some new games this year as well that I've already played. So, still, it's interesting that it went up, because I actually, even with the 10 new games, I wasn't 100% sure if that would go up or not.
Yeah, you would think just the more games you play, there's going to be those ones that you find that one likes and the other doesn't. But so we'll see. We'll see 10 more games next year if it's going to increase or maybe drop down. But then myself and yourself, so brothers, pretty close. We started out with 8 crossover only in the first year that we did this, and then we bumped it up to 13, so quite a big boost there.
That was a big jump.
And then it actually dropped one, and this year we had 12 crossover. And that's interesting as well, but I have played a lot more. I feel like my taste has kind of gone off more than either of yours. We all kind of have certain games that we do like that more than the others, but I feel like mine, especially with solo gaming and some of the more cooperative games, I think I do enjoy those quite a bit more, and you have gotten more into them, but I feel like that has definitely affected the crossovers, not only with us two, but also me and Mac, which Michaela and I started out with 9 crossovers, down to 6, and now down to 4. So
that is pretty shocking to me. Only having 4.
Only 4. Although there are 3-way crossovers, which are not factored into this. So There are
Yes.
more games that we do cross over on, but it's all three of us. Should have noted that right away, but yeah, so we have more than 4 games crossover, but just us two, excluding you, that is a very low number.
Yeah, I would think there'd be a little bit more, but that probably makes sense. Because, yeah, I think there are definitely some games that both of us have probably played that Michaela still hasn't played, and those might be on our
That's
list.
true. That's true.
And then kind of two, I think surprisingly, I would have maybe thought some of ours, or we might have more similarities, because I feel like we've played a decent amount of new games on like Board Game Arena, and Michaela usually doesn't play on Board Game Arena that often. But I don't know that we had too many from Board Game Arena on our list. I had Acropolis, which I don't think made your list, right?
It did make my list.
Oh, it did?
Yes.
So that was one of them.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't remember if there was any other ones that we thought were both really good from Board Game Arena.
I feel like
good enough to make our
I feel
list.
like there might have been another one, but yeah, that is interesting because usually we'll be the first two to kind of try a new game, especially if it is a little heavier or maybe a cooperative game for sure, since Michaela is not a fan of those. But yeah, and it seems like Michaela and I do team up against you in the top 60 videos more than any other team up, so that is interesting as well. But then on to those 3-way crossovers. We started out with 12 crossover, which is pretty good for originally we did 50 games, so that's over 20% of the games are completely agreed on. And then it dropped down nearly 50% to 7 crossovers. And that was a scary moment because it's like, oh gosh, what is going on?
We're all going off.
But then it made a massive resurgence, up to 18 3-way crossovers.
That's pretty shocking to me. Was it really that many?
It was that many. Yeah, I think I have them
crazy
listed here. I don't know if I wrote down which ones were the original list. I guess where was it? Is that the original? 2022. That is not the original. 2021.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, we had 12. A lot of those dropped off. And then it was just down to King Domino, Dominion, Rajas of the Ganges, Bunny Kingdom, Quacks of Quedlinburg, Wingspan, and Tapestry. And I believe all of those carried over. Well, Rajas of the Ganges, I did allow to be a 3-way crossover because you did forget to put it on the list, but you said it would have been. So yeah, those are the games that I think kind of have carried through. Mostly, I think Bunny Kingdom, Quacks, Wingspan, and Tapestry were on all 3 of our lists all 3 years. And the other ones, I just can't believe that we did add so many games.
Yeah, that is pretty surprising. Even though we did add 10 new, I mean, because that's even if adding just those 10 in, we've got 11 more than we had last year. So that is really shocking to me. But yeah, because I don't even know if we had any brand new to all of us games like last year that came after like the midway or when we would have made our list last year. That would have ended up making all.
I think Azul, the original Azul did end up.
So that was one of them, but outside of that, I don't know.
Yeah, Seven Wonders Duel was at Cascadia, was one of the 3-way. That one we got right around that point as well. I finally came around to Viticulture. Clank Catacombs kind of brought that back into your guys' list. Planet Unknown was, I don't think it was on my list that year, so it's a good handful of new games, but also some resurgences. But yeah, so hopefully it just gets higher and higher, and we'll be crossing over 100%.
All the same games. You just get rid of everything else.
But yeah, so speaking of getting rid of games, games that dropped, and we'll start with the highest drops from each of our lists that did not fall off of the list. And for yourself, one that was so heartbreaking to me, I was shocked to even hear it. That was Bunny Kingdom. Fell from number 20, fell 36 spaces to number 56. So luckily we added those extra 10 spots. That's crazy. And Michaela dropped Hadara from 13 to 42, so that's a 29 spot drop.
I feel like, I don't know, we might have only played Hadara like once, or maybe not even played it at all. Since last year's list.
I don't know if I
probably is probably why.
Yeah. And then I've got Champions of Midgard that dropped 28 spots from 30 to 58, which...
We just recently got that back to the table,
Yeah,
so I think
so
that might have helped it a little.
That's the question. Where do you think these games are going to go? Because like you said, that game of Champions of Midgard, the only reason that it did drop was because it wasn't played. Because after that play, I'm like, oh, this could even be top 10, I think.
Yeah, I think it all depends. I think if we get more plays of each of them in, they'll come back. I don't know that any of them are games that we all of a sudden don't like or are like, we've had enough plays of them and we're totally through. I think probably the most likely one for us in that vein would be Bunny Kingdom for me. I think because the rest of Hadara and Champions of Midgard, we haven't really played like a ton of plays.
Yeah.
So Bunny Kingdom's probably been the most played out of all of those.
Yeah,
so that one would be, if I had to guess one of the three, so that would drop off.
Your cooling would be you're a little more sure that you are cooling on the game versus just a lack of plays.
Right.
Yeah. And then I'll jump down here. Just because it makes sense, I will go to the dropping off of the list. You had 2, or the highest drop-offs, I believe. So you had Rogers of the Ganges, which, like we said, doesn't really count, but that was 28th last year, and I think you said it probably would have been around there, maybe higher. But Dinosaur World fell off of your list, and there were no Dino games, no Dinogenics, no Dinosaur World. They were 32nd. This one was last year, and that surprised me when I actually looked. I'm like, he didn't have Dinosaur Game on his list.
I don't think after we did our Dino Mania last year, if you want to check that out.
He's like, they're all the same.
We've gotten some more Dino games since, so we might have to re-rank what we had there. But, I think ever since we did that, I don't remember if we played another dinosaur game.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Between then and when we did the list. And I think that it just ended up being one of those that was, if we were doing a top 100, it would have made it. Well, it would have probably been in like the 60 to 70 range or something. There's just so many that just were right on the edge, I think. I think I probably had a couple other ones that fell off too, that it just was, it didn't get to the table. And it was just kind of, it must have just been what I was feeling at the time, I'm guessing, as to what, out of the ones that I haven't played in a while, which ones am I wanting to get back to the table.
That's true. That's true. Especially if you use Pub Meeple a little bit, and especially with that, it is totally sometimes just the feel. It could even just be the artwork from the cover, because that's what you see in the ranking system when you pick one. So I could see how that happened, but that was a little surprising. And Jaipur fell off of Mac's list from number 36, which surprised me because that felt like that's been around a long time, and it's kind of been a staple of our collection just for those quick filler games. So that was interesting that fell off her list. I think Stone Age fell off her list as well. That had kind of dropped a little bit due to another one of our challenges, the 10x10, and it didn't quite stand the test of time and 10 plays in a year.
Right. In comparison to hundreds of other games we've gotten since. Just one of those that it's not like it turns into a bad game. It just loses its luster a little bit. Yeah.
And then the biggest drop of these off the list was Return to Dark Tower.
I didn't even realize that had fallen off your list.
For me. So I was wondering, I'm like, he's probably not thinking about it, but I'm like, I wonder if he's going to think about that game and wonder when it's coming up on my list. And
if you would have asked me, I honestly would have thought it was on your list this year.
Yeah.
I totally forgot.
This one, I do still love it. It's so approachable from turn to turn, but playing it solo, it isn't as easy as I would like it to be because it's a giant board and a lot of things on the map to manage, especially with the expansion, which I played with the expansion once, and that adds like special things, abilities to each of the 4 sections of the board, and that's the last time I played it, and that was very overwhelming. Just managing all of that myself, so I think that did hurt it a little bit, along with then lack of plays after that. So I still like it a lot, and I think if I played it more, it could bump up, and that's true for all of these, I think. So that was the drop-offs, and then games that fell off the list and got back on, because now we've done it 3 years, so we can get the resurgences.
There we go.
And
Speaking of resurgences.
You had, which one is that? We have so many RR games. Red Rising.
Red Rising, yeah.
Red Rising was 29th the first year, off the list, and now just barely back on by technicality. Since we added 10 more games, it was 53. So I climbed back on the list, made Mac kind of happy. It was still too low for her, but and then Clank as well because of Clank Catacombs, I believe. It was 26 the first year, but then you just really weren't feeling the kind of post-campaign play for Clank Legacy. And that bumped back into the 30s. And Michaela as well only had one that got a resurgence, and that was Clank. But that hopped all the way up to 13.
Wow. So
that,
it was at 30.
I don't even believe that number. Even though I wrote these down, I don't believe that number. That is crazy. And then I as well had Red Rising for similar reasons. And then Yahtzee was 28th and wasn't on the list the next year. And I don't know why. I must have forgotten it because I don't ever remember disliking Yahtzee or getting cold on it. It's not like, that's so Yahtzee. Intimidating to get that to the table.
You have Yahtzee on your list at one point. It's not like, now all of a sudden I hate Yahtzee.
It's like, just sick of it now. And then Ethnos as well, which I didn't remember that falling off of my list, but that was in the 20s and fell off and back into the 30s. It's just such a solid game. I can't imagine Yahtzee and Ethnos not being on my list.
Yeah. Well, that was probably two. So Red Rising then and Ethnos were probably two of those where we got the three-way crossovers.
Yeah, got
again
those
then.
back. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But not those. Yahtzee. Not Yahtzee. That was not a three-way crossover.
Not quite.
But yeah, so those climbed back onto the list. The highest climb that was already on the list and continued to be on the list for you was Unmatched. Went 20 spots from 23 to number 3, which is a crazy climb. Just your whole top 10 was crazy, mind blowing, and very sad at times. Seven Wonders Duel for Mac climbed 30 spots from 42 to 12. And Wingspan, 22 spots up for me from 29 all the way to 7. So a couple of these that went right into the top 10. And
jumps.
Wingspan was actually my number one game at one point. Not since we've been doing the list, but so for it to kind of fall down and get cool on it. But I think when we played it in Vegas, just all the matches preparing for that, and it never really getting old. I think that just solidified it. And I'm like, okay. This game is still great. I can play it 30 times in a month, and I'm still going to have a great time with it. So That's what brought that back for me. And I think Seven Wonders Duel for Max, you just got to play it more and more and just continued to love the game. Bruno Catala, got to shout him out. He knows what he's doing, these two-player games.
He does.
But Unmatched, is that going to stay... Is that top 5, do you think, in the future?
I don't know if it'll stay there, but I think it'll stay in the top 10. We'll see. We'll see how it progresses here. We're currently in the process of filming a unnamed, unmatched tournament, so we'll see how that goes for me, and then we'll have to get back to that.
Yes.
If it ends horribly for me, it might be pushed right off the list.
Doesn't get any of its
biggest fall next
doesn't
year.
Get any of its characters into the second round. I hate Unmatched. But yeah, those jump up. The highest debut. Onto a list. So a new game to your list, whether you just played it for the first time or maybe it's a brand new game, Cult of the New.
Wow. Looking at me.
Let's go the worst number. So Max was jumped up to 16, and that was Azul.
Which, original Azul.
Yeah, the original Azul. So you've played every Azul, I believe, other than like the chocolate version. And this one... looks to be we'll probably do a ranking of the Azul things, but looks to be Michaela's favorite, and there's just that classic game is just so solid, and it is so clear why that spawned a franchise. It definitely deserves to be in the list. It's 3-way crossover. My jumps, I had 2 jumps into my number 13 and 12, so back-to-back debuts, and those were Metro X, which is a flip and right game. I just think it's so clever how you're building routes. And then Under Falling Skies, which I had played maybe both of the previous years, but I think it just kind of barely missed out. But then I just played it. I finished the campaign that I had started, and it was so easy to get into, and it was just an amazing experience, so it just jumped almost into the top 10. And then yours, Cult of the New.
Wow.
Fall of the Mountain King, and that was your number 12. So also almost into the top 10, which
He's wanting it to fall.
I think with even one more play, this might have been in your top 10.
I think it would have, just because, I just really love everything about it, and the production, I think, just gives it that extra edge. It's like I really like the gameplay and everything, but yeah, the production for me gets it done and brings it to that next level. It's kind of like the spoilers. My top game that I picked, I think that's got a production that, if you look at it and compare it to some productions these days, you might say, well, that looks old. But
Yeah,
I think it's
maybe.
still a pretty solid production
I think
overall.
it is. I think it is.
And that's what I think some of them, for me, it may be kind of not the right way to look at it, but that can kind of give it that extra. I think that brings it from like a 9 to a 10 for me, like out of 10.
Yeah.
Or like in that, maybe not necessarily a 10, but, up into the higher echelon.
Yeah.
Whereas
it
if
does.
something was a really ugly game and didn't have
Yeah.
nice components, even if it was like just the perfect experience, I
Yeah,
just don't know if that could make it
It is
necessarily.
a factor because it's how much fun do you get out of the experience, and it's fun to have good-looking components. So you can't just say this is the best mechanical game and say it must be a 10. It doesn't matter how ugly it is, because and some people really don't care about that. But I think we factor it in. We definitely do. I definitely do. I probably do the most.
Right.
I can get carried away a little bit if something is great looking, but. Yeah, I think it's fair to factor that in.
Yeah, it's a little longer. It's going to be a little tougher to table. So that one I could see falling, but that's going to be mainly for
Our fault.
lack of plays. Lack of plays.
We'll have to try it. We'll have to play it
I
again.
don't know. I'll have to see. I don't remember if there's a solo on that
There is
one.
solo for In the Hall of the Mountain King now. You got that
maybe it is.
expansion, so I would think they probably have one for that.
Might be.
So that was new to the list. Also, the most new games to the list. Mac had 17.
Okay. That actually, she's wanting to get set in her ways.
Yeah. And we are adding 10 games. So
Yes.
that's definitely going to factor in.
Right.
Like we said, she had 1 resurgence. So of the 10 games, that's going to be 9 guaranteed new games.
Right.
I think there's always wonky things with these lists grouping things
What could
together, and but yeah, that's probably about right with that 10 game boost. I would think maybe about 7 new games would be about right, just because she has played so many more. You have 19, so a couple more than that, and then I have the most with 21 new games to my list, and I don't know what it is. I think I just got to respect a lot more games like Viticulture, getting although Ethnos was on the list before, so that
He didn't. He respected it, then didn't.
and then I
now
didn't.
respects
I had
it again.
no respect at all. But yeah, it's always interesting. Although it's going to be weird because we're going to keep adding 10 each year, so to really have a stable idea of what we are actually adding, which we can figure it out, but it is interesting.
Yeah, but they're all pretty close there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's probably about right with new games, and then also getting to play games for the second and third and fourth time, deciding really whether or not that should be on your list.
Yeah.
That seems about right.
Yeah. And then games that have stuck around from the very beginning. You have 31 games still from your original 50. Michaela also has 31 from her original 50. And I actually have 33, which I feel like I probably have the most chaotic list.
Yeah.
So that is surprising that I still have the most left
You
over.
do, though. Like you said, there's some wonky stuff on our list, and you are the one that seems to kind of group things together. So
I do group them together. So I think I had about 70 games in this list of 60 games, just in pairings. So I definitely can cover a lot more, and that does throw the numbers off. So if you're doing all the math here and the numbers, you're like, that does not add up, then it's probably my fault.
but yeah, so that's probably more than I would have guessed, but at the same time, that probably makes sense now that we added another 10.
Yeah.
Because it probably would have been a little bit lower if we didn't have that extra 10.
Yeah.
I'm not sure by how many, but yeah.
Yeah, I wonder. I just feel like that number is going to get smaller and smaller from that original year. I mean, adding 10 each time is going to kind of boost
Keep
them.
it in
Like
place
keep like
for
the
a little
Bunny
bit.
Kingdoms maybe just barely on your list, but
Right.
yeah, it'd be interesting. Then kind of keeping the same with that, or I guess you've mentioned my unique ways of scoring. So unique to them games.
Oh.
Which is kind of, it's not really what you were saying, but I'll move to this anyway. So games that only you have on your list. You have 13. So you, I feel like you would have more.
It feels like it should be more.
You have Endeavor and Glenmore 2, games like that. Although Michaela...
Fall of the Mountain King.
Fall of the Mountain King. Although Michaela has come around on some of them, like Maracaibo and... I was going to say Circadians, but actually that is only on her list.
Right.
She has 21 unique to her, so
that makes sense.
8 more than you do. And then I have 7 more than her at 28, which I'm not surprised by that. Like I said, I like a lot of solo games and cooperative games.
Wow.
And some of the classics as well, like Yahtzee and Cribbage. So.
But yeah, that just really surprises me about mine, because I don't know, I just feel like I've got...
Why did we give you so much crap?
And maybe, I don't know, what... I'm trying to think. Maybe I just don't have a lot of, like, the games, like the heavier... Euro games on my list, and it could be the case because I just don't play them as often, so I don't really know where they really are. So maybe, like, if we had done like 100, maybe it'd be more likely that my next 40 would be more unique than your guys's. Your guys's would start matching. I don't know. That would throw it off, though. I think we'd have a lot less unique in general if we added 40 more.
Yeah,
I think
we'll get there.
We'll get there.
And then. The number of games that you had the exact same number as the
same
year
spot
before,
as last year.
You had one of them.
Well, like I wasn't looking at it.
You shook up that top 10, and that same one was not your number 1. That was your number 7, Cthulhu: Death May Die.
Just randomly.
That is just so random as games are shooting up above it, dropping down below it, and it's just standing still. Standing firm in that 7 spot, which it's just kind of completely random. It's going to be in kind of a zone, and it just moves around. I would think there would be more exact crossover, though.
Yeah.
I feel like I do kind of have the same top 10 or so.
Yeah.
Which
I think if you looked at how many top 10s were different in mine, I think those would have remained pretty much the same.
Yeah.
There would have been. I think I would have had like 7. Probably 7 or 8 of the 10 staying in the top 10.
Yeah.
Just kind of moved around a little bit.
Yeah. And Michaela had 4 staying the same. She had her 1, 2, and 3 were the same as last year. And then randomly, her number 43, Quacks of Quedlinburg, was the same. And she did the same thing last year with, like, her 47 was Tiny Towns, and that was the same one. I'm like, she likes to just have a random one stay the same.
That's how she works.
But yeah, so not a lot of movement at the top of her list. And then I have my number 1 and 2 were the same. I don't know if we want to spoil them. If you can go watch our top 10. And then my number 11 was also the same. Although that was also, I grouped 2 games together there, which... So a bigger target.
Some cheats.
But I had to get more games in there. There's so many good ones. And then we'll go into maybe, how about games that we have extra content for, which this is kind of hard to determine, just like, is it actually an expansion, or is it like Quacks of Quedlinburg, which we do have expansions for, but we also have those upgraded bits, and if those are all we had, would that count? I would include it just because I feel those do add a lot to the game. And I kind of did it for all our lists, and it was about 50-50, half of each of our lists. I could find that we definitely did have extra content for, which I think that's about right. I think there's much less early on. I feel like we did not get very many expansions for maybe the first couple of years that we kind of were into the hobby, but now there have just been so many expansions, especially to the games that we publishers like Stonemaier Games, which we have all of their games and enjoy pretty much all of them as well, and we'll pretty much take any content that we can get for them.
Right.
But yeah, that is interesting. About 50%. That I feel that's about right.
Yeah. I would have thought it was maybe a little bit lower than that, but
Yeah.
And it probably depends a little bit for each one of us.
Yeah, and then kind of games that were crowdfunded, which is kind of hard to find.
Exact thing.
And it's not necessarily that we crowdfunded them, but
Right, they were at some point.
At
possibly.
some point, so these are not totally accurate. If you want to go through all our lists and give us accurate numbers, go ahead and leave it in a comment below. But Michaela had the least, which I think that seems right. That seems right.
There's something right about that.
Yeah, she's definitely not us to go crazy for the cult of the new and the flashy things. But she still had 16.
Yeah.
So that's about, what would that be? A fourth, 25% about of her list. And then I got about 30% of my list at 19 games. And then you had nearly half of your list was crowdfunded at 28 games.
Makes sense.
I don't know how you have these big differences in like.
How can I be so similar to you guys, but then yet.
It's like
I
you
don't
have the least unique, but then also the most crowdfunded. I don't know. These numbers don't make any sense. But yeah, just crowdfunding taking over, and we have more crowdfunding games that are coming, and they're probably going to be making the list. They're taking over. But yeah, I think probably less than half of those we crowdfunded. Just they were, because like even Lanterns, I looked, and like Lanterns was on Kickstarter or something. I'm like, I would never have guessed that. That might not have been the one, but it was some games like that where you're like, oh, really? So I don't consider them all like big Kickstarter games, but they were there. And then you kind of made a big deal about having all of your Spiel des Jahres winners on a certain section of your.
No.
You did not win this Spiel des Jahres and Kennerspiel. You had 4 Spiels, 2 Kenners, winners, so you know more about the nominees, and you were factoring that in, and you probably do have more of those. But then Mac and I each also had 2 Kennerspiels, and we each had 6 Spiel winners, so we actually had more winners than you did, even though you made a big deal about it. Like, oh,
wow.
This is the.
Well, I wonder how many of these were 3-way crossovers, because it was Azul, Cascadia, Quacks of Quedlinburg,
King Domino.
So
I think you're 4, crossed over with us, and I think Mac and I had one that we crossed over on, and then one unique. I forget exactly what they were though, but that is also surprisingly few at the same time. Like, I mean, especially Kennerspiels, just being 2 of them, I would think that I could find a third, because we're probably going to know about them and have checked them out and played them just because they do have that award. But
yeah, but that's gotten a little lighter too, because
I
think Planet Unknown was nominated this year, and that one could have been another 3-way crossover Kennerspiel winner if it had won, like it should have.
It should have.
But it is what it is, I guess. Yeah, it felt like I had a lot more, but apparently not. I guess I didn't realize you guys were going to add all those same games. I think I didn't realize that you guys liked Azul as much, but I just knew that I was adding Cascadia and Azul, and I was just like knowing both of those were Spiel winners, so I was like, yeah. And then I think at one point I was considering having My City on my list, and then because I had just played it like right before we were doing the list, I'm like, it could maybe sneak on there. And I think that was one too. So that was just making me think like all of those, or maybe that was a nominee. I don't remember if that one won. It might not have actually won, but
So we did add a few. We're filling out the. And then, which leads to do you think we do first?
What do we got left?
We got Stonemaier Garphill comparison or games from the BGG Top 100. What do you think?
Well, let's see if we can redeem my call with Stonemaier Garphill, because I also acted like I had a ton of those. Probably was winning.
He did
winning in that.
He acted like he switched teams completely from Stonemaier to Garphill, his new favorite publisher. And he had 5 Stonemaier games, and he had 4 Garphill games. Which
did you count Shem game? That would be a tie.
Yeah, Noctiluca would bring it up to a tie, I believe. So it's about even for you. So, but still, only 5 Stonemaier games is a bit surprising, because we have about 13,
It is.
14, 15 now, and I mean, we like all of them, I would say.
Yeah.
And just 5 there, it just feels like quite a few, especially compared to some others here. Not me. I had 4. I had 4 Stonemaier, and I had only 1 Garphill game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which one was that? Viscounts?
That was Raiders of Scythia.
Oh yeah, Raiders.
Raiders of
Yeah, I
Scythia.
knew
So
that.
that is also surprising because I enjoy all the Garphill games, and maybe with more plays, some of them could sneak on there, and definitely maybe if
I think we got a comment.
Maybe if we add 40 at a time instead of 10, maybe they could make it.
Wow. I think we got a comment in the top 10 video saying need more Garphill. So I guess we're gonna have to play him until it gets up there on your list.
Is that your alternate account?
No.
And Michaela comes in the middle there of Garphill with only 3 Garphill, but she is the Stonemaier Queen with 12.
12. Wow.
12, which is nearly all of them.
Right.
That is crazy.
And I think she's only played Smitten like once or twice.
Oh, yeah.
So that one likely wouldn't make her list.
No.
And
yeah,
I guess I don't even remember which ones didn't make her list.
Was on there.
Yeah, she prefers Between Two
and
Castles.
I'm not sure
so,
if I think Rolling Realms did end up making her list.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is just more than us combined.
That is a lot.
That is crazy. She's Stonemaier Queen. I mean,
so
you can't deny it.
15 out of 60 games were Stonemaier and Garphill for her. 9 out of 60 were for me, and 5 out of 60 for you. So makes up. I mean, that makes up a good chunk of her list, and even mine has about a 6th almost.
Yeah.
And yours, yours only a 12th.
Only a 12.
So not too many.
It's a good amount.
You probably have
a
12th of them are at least a 12th are probably Bruno games.
I would say so. Yeah. I should have listed Bruno games. 30. 50% of the list. Then finally here, we have games.
Oh, this looks like I'm redeeming myself now.
Games that are in the top.
The people. Zach is the people, I think.
Yeah. Top 100 games on BoardGameGeek at the time of making this. Who knows? Maybe all of those have fallen out now.
Probably.
I have the least at just 12. But, I mean, that's still
a good chunk.
That's like
of your
12% of the top 100 on BGG, somewhere around there.
When at most you could only have 60%. Because they've only named 60 games. Well, unless you grouped them like yourself.
Yeah, I did group them.
So who knows how many you could have.
Yeah. Mac had 2 more than me at 14, which I'd say that's a little bit surprising. But I think games like Maracaibo and stuff, some of those heavier ones that she has taken a liking to, kind of have been in those. I believe, that's top 100.
Although to be fair, her love of those Stonemaier games, top 100, those kind of go hand in hand.
That is true. That is 12 right there. And then you made a claim during the videos as well that you had the most top 100. And
I finally lived up to my hype.
And he was not lying. He had 20. So a third of his
third
list
of my games
is in the top 100
Wow.
games.
Wow, I am a hipster.
You are a
I would not have guessed that high of an amount. I do know though, like the last 20 that we did, I feel like I had a lot of them that were in the top.
Yeah.
So I think even out of this 20, I wouldn't be surprised if half of those were in my top 20 or more.
Yeah.
Probably.
I would say probably so. Because you have those Stonemaier ones as well, and those are pretty high for you. And I think you probably have all the Stonemaier games that are in the top 100 in your list, and probably the Garphills as well. Some of those, maybe. I guess I'm not sure exactly.
Did I have what Architects again this year, or did I?
Architects did fall off the list. That's another sad one.
I think Raiders is still in the top 100, and and then I've got the big ones, Brass Terraforming Mars.
Yep, Terraforming Mars,
and got a lot of them. You have to go see where all those rank. What else? Did I have Dune Imperium?
Michaela had Dune Imperium. I think it might have barely made your list. I think it was in your last section there. Yeah.
But yeah, those are some interesting stats. We'll have to see kind of what ends up happening next year. I'm guessing we'll have another Stonemaier game for Michaela to add to her list,
Yeah,
at least
yeah.
one, if not maybe two.
Yeah.
Because I think the next one should be kind of available for ordering within half a month here. I think
Within
so.
30 minutes.
Within 30 minutes. Let's check the time. So yeah, that'll be exciting. I'm sure there'll be more Garphill games,
Yeah,
so we're
yeah.
gonna have to see how that shakes things up. But yeah, let us know in the comments below if there's any other stats you'd be interested in. We can definitely put those together and figure those out as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, we appreciate you making it this far in the video if you have, and we appreciate you watching our top 60, going along with us through the journey, going back and looking at our old ones to see how massive things have changed. But yeah, we're looking forward to next year already,
Yes.
I'm sure. We'll see. I think it's probably one of our favorite
Yeah.
video things to
Yeah.
do each year.
Yeah, like any list making.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think at the end of this year we'll have our top 10, at least top 10. We'll see, kind of if we feel like we have, top 20 worth.
Yeah, we did some honorable mentions last year. so
Right.
we could do
So
that again.
we'll see top 10 of this year that are new to us.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we don't probably play enough of just 2023 release games to
Yeah.
really make a good list. I mean, we
Yeah.
could probably make a list, but
Yeah.
it would just pretty much be the 10 we'd played then.
Yeah.
And ranking them. So if you want to stay tuned for that, definitely subscribe, and you'll see that at the beginning, right at the beginning of the next year, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
otherwise, thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to
Keep on nibbling.
on our content.